jump into this post newsletter news, I guess, that Andreessen Horowitz just launches crypto arms race, with a $2.2 billion crypto fund, the largest vehicle of its kind, which is escalating, the venture industry's bid to back the blockchain startups. And I just want to see if you guys are seeing any sort of investments lately in our space, and where do you think they will be going to maybe in the next year. So if someone in our audience is trying to raise funding, kind of giving them a roadmap of what they should focus on. Well, I can start. Certainly DeFi is sort of the primary thing I'm hearing from both the foundations and the CEOs in the space. I just spoken to someone who has several DeFi ventures on Tezos, and they're literally going. They started with yield farming, but they're going in many different directions. The one thing they're staying away from at the moment is insurance, as the insurance companies have to partner with them in order to get this executed, even in DeFi. And that partnership is taking way too long and very challenging to create, with a legacy business of that size and that strength in Washington. But all the other things like loan opportunities, opportunities to create staking pools, et cetera, they're all open and fast developing on all the native chains. Are you guys seeing that as?
Yes, and I'm seeing a lot of the hedge funds, they've got, the sniffers out there, and every time there's a new liquidity pool, they're like, boom, they're in it, and it gets filled up really fast because they seem. So here's my thing about DeFi. I just lost my shirt in DeFi. So I'm salty. And I don't feel like I'm not dumb. And I've worked in the stock market, I've worked in finance. Somehow or other, some of these DeFis, these tokens are not secure enough, right? Like they missed a step. Like you buy the token and the point is to lock it up in a liquidity pool, but it didn't get locked up. So there was this gap between when you could buy the token, when it went on the public market, and when the liquidity pools opened. And so the token price soared, and then all the big boys just sold out. And then
Can I just make a stronger statement? A lot of these are just plain scams.
Yes,
It's
exactly.
a black box. You have no idea how these returns are being generated, right?
Exactly.
I mean, some of the returns are incredible, and you look at it and you go, "There's no way I'm touching that," right? I don't understand where it comes from, and it's just going to end badly.
Well, that's my thing. I mean, one of the returns that I'm in, it's like 524% APY. I'm like, that's quite lovely. And where are you making that money? So that's my question. Christian, you're not muted.
Hey, Christian.
Oh,
Would you
Hi,
like to
Christian.
introduce yourself?
Sorry, guys, I'm driving, so I'm gonna be a little more silent than usual.
Okay.
But
I'm only interrupting you if you say something entirely crazy. How's that?
That's fabulous. I love it when you interrupt me.
Okay.
So what I would love to do is get like 4 or 5 DeFi experts together and do a panel strictly on due diligence and unpacking DeFi projects. I think that would be a great room.
I totally second that motion because as much as I've been in the crypto space since the very beginning, and as much as all I do is stay up, to try to keep up with the changes, I don't really understand. I've looked into DeFi many times, and all I see are mirrors. And I know it's possible, and not only possible. I mean, there's legitimate businesses out there like Nexo, for example, and Salt and Celsius and these kinds of things, right? And there's a ton of stuff that's really like there's not even a company behind it. There's no there isn't even an idea of in which jurisdiction the thing is operating or whatever. But I would like to understand actually what the opportunities are. And I also believe that DeFi is over the long term the banking system killer, because banks have had traditionally two roles. One of them is to hold your money, right? So it's safety and accessibility to money, and the second has been lending. and the lending is really where all the game is, right? That's where all the money is. That's what makes the world go round. And DeFi has the potential to do that. So I think it's worth a better understanding of the automated market makers and these liquidity pools and how they work as opposed to order books and stuff like that.
And also, what's really interesting about that, some of these opportunities in DeFi, if crypto.com asked me to put, X many thousands of CRO or CRO into my account in order to stake my credit card with them, if it was always in in crypto.com's currency and not in dollar signs, right? I would feel a little more comfortable. I would feel like, okay, they're betting on themselves as well. And they're not just converting US dollar into some value they need to have to create this banking relationship with me. So I feel that they're sort of not drinking their own Kool-Aid at the moment. So that's the issue.
Well, you know what's really interesting about that is the whole thing about staking in order to get your credit card. It's kind of like what we did in Wyoming with the 100% reserve banking laws for digital assets, the sandbox that we just put. I shouldn't say we. I did lobby, but I had very little to do with it other than smiling nicely and telling people what it was about. Um, so the banking laws in Wyoming are set up 100% to protect everyone involved while we're figuring out, how does this work, how volatile is it, how risky is it, and then once we get to a certain point, then they'll be able to do some fractional banking. But I think that's exactly what they're doing with the Crow, is you've got to stake a certain amount, and then as I understand it, that's basically your credit limit. So it's like a secured credit card, secured with their token, which is, you're right, they're betting on themselves, which is great. And I like crypto.com. I've had no problems with them. Their support is actually really good. They respond, unlike CoinDesk, who I want to kill.
Or Binance, who just got, punished in the UK by the regulators. They said they didn't completely shut it down, but, in essence, they violated their financial regulations in the UK. And maybe you know this better, Daniel. Why does Binance have so many outs, all over the world? First, it's a centralized company. It's not a DAO. So it's kind of like a Google of blockchain. And then it doesn't even with all that structure and ability to make decisions, it has all these issues in terms of dealing with customer service and dealing with the regulations in each jurisdiction. Why did they get away with it and they're still valued so highly?
Well, there was actually an interesting interview with the CEO of Binance maybe a couple of years ago, and he actually addresses that question uh, indirectly. But essentially, he says that Binance got lucky. They were among the first ones, and they just happened to get critical mass. And back then, there was not a single exchange that was on firm regulatory stance. We're talking when Binance started, so like we're going back like 5-6 years. So I don't know exactly when they started, but essentially, he said like back then, like we just got lucky. We were the largest ones. Nobody else had good customer service. So it just happened. And now we're starting to build, of course, the good customer service experience and all that. But essentially, like Binance has expanded into a lot of things. And I think essentially what happens is like they're large enough that they're growing too fast and things are not going ideal for their customers. But it doesn't matter because as you mentioned, they're like Google. They almost have like a semi-monopolistic position, at least in the offshore market. So it's okay if things are not ideal because there's still gonna be people migrating to Binance every single day. So they can get away with it because they had a first mover advantage.
Fascinating stuff. James, you had a question?
Also, I wanted to just add to Daniel, or rather to address your question as to valuation. One of the things, I think that there's two features to the Binance ecosystem that have created great value and are not maybe widely understood. One of them is the discount mechanism that they use on the token, where if you trade and you stake the token or you pay with the token, you get a discount off of the trading fees. The second is the fact that the Binance token has a certain supply, and the corporation is literally burning their profits in terms of the token. So that's going to give it great valuation, right? Because the more successful they are, the more tokens that they burn, the higher the price for it. So those are two interesting. I think James was going to say something.
The
Yeah.
latest market cap for Binance. I haven't followed lately, but just like these are the type of things that like we gotta keep track and compare against other things. 'Cause for example, when Coinbase listed and they were like at a valuation, I forget the exact number, it was something like 200 billion. And at that time, they were like larger by multiples, larger than, for example, the New York Stock Exchange or NASDAQ and stuff like that. So it's like those were red flags to know that the valuation was a little, rich. And Binance, the things that it attracts a lot of retail investors that don't have that knowledge to actually compare against similar businesses. So it may be in a bubble. I don't follow their market cap closely, but that's some of the things that Binance can get away with it just because of the amount of like retail, unsophisticated investors and users that essentially put up with the lack of customer service, put up with the fact that Binance Smart Chain is actually, I mean, it started as a centralized chain, a centralized database, really. If you have all the nodes run by the same entity, it's centralized. And nobody cares because I don't think anybody's doing their homework. And then like it gathers like so much momentum that then everybody else just kind of like jumps on the bandwagon and it happens. They get away with a lot of stuff, and I just don't get it. But I think it's just because it's a lot of retail consumers that just have no idea.
Hey, Daniel. Hey, guys. I just wanted to chime in real quick. Yeah. Exchanges suck. I was in the crypto. Was it called? Cryptopia crash, and I lost 2 Bitcoin. That was painful for me. So I can sympathize. Um, Real quick. I'm a co-founder of an NFT platform, and we're actually using DeFi as a layer on top of games, which I think is going to be huge in the next few years, if not now. And on top of that, we leverage Avi for some of the over collateralized loans or borrowing that we offer for NFTs, which gives the borrower or the it gives the borrower some security in the time frame that they're borrowing an NFT, and they don't really lose the capital they're putting up to borrow that NFT. Anyway, what are your guys' thoughts on DeFi layer on gaming right now? Gaming is becoming and always has been huge, and I see a shift in the way that people make money playing video games today.
Oh, I think DeFi in video games is going to be awesome, and that whole borrowing thing. Are you talking about like borrowing like the Beast card in Magic the Gathering so that they can go win a tournament?
No, our platform is different. So basically, we go after people who have spent a lot of money in buying these NFTs that intrinsically have no value unless you're a hardcore collector for a particular card, or maybe you're playing some sort of two-dimensional game which gives you a little bit of functionality. We want to wrap your NFTs into our own hero, which you can then play in. We call it the game of games, and you can level up that hero based on how you use our um, DeFi application. So, very succinctly, if you had like 100 NFTs sitting in multiple wallets, you could connect to our platform, and all those NFTs would then be valuable in upgrading the stats of a hero you could play in a game, which would then earn you our token, or it would earn you the ability to lend it out to someone who maybe has more time than you do to play the game. So um, it's a unique concept. I mean, there's Niftify out there, and there's other platforms that allow you to, lease NFTs. We're trying to gamify it.
Interesting. I'm DeFiing personal reputation, so I get the idea of putting DeFi in things where it wouldn't normally be thought of. Um, but when it comes to gaming and everything gaming, the thing I loved about Chromia and their NFTs was because your NFT can wear an NFT, you can have it limited, use. It only works 3 times and then it self-destructs. You can have it time delayed self-destruct, so it's only 30 minutes. Those kinds of things. And so you could use it once if it can be used 3 times and then sell it on the secondary market. Those kinds of things I think are more understandable to gamers than investment grade NFTs for wrapped for gaming purposes. I don't know if that I don't know if you're going to get the $1 million investors to look at that and go, "Sure, I'll wrap my NFT so a 13-year-old can go kill the boss." I think they might not get it. I don't know.
Well,
That's my 2 cents.
no. And I get it. And I was just talking strictly about our game. What we want to do is we want to onboard games that already exist with their own characters and allow them to utilize the platform so that they have their own ecosystem of gameplay. We don't want to, step on anyone's toes with our own heroes. We're just offering that as an incentive.
I
And the
like it.
incentive,
I
yeah,
think it's great. I
go
think
ahead.
what you're trying to do is kind of like a second life, but with DeFi. And I think that makes perfect sense because there is a real movement towards these virtual communities, whether they're gaming or just, VR, AR, like I worked with Superworld, to create an economy within this XR environment, right? And if you're going to be the platform for all the games to go through this without having to learn everything about the space like we do here every week, we're all learning from each other because there's so much to do. I think that would be an excellent opportunity to really create kind of next generation of gaming.
Well, you guys are familiar with Polkadot and the way that they're kind of how their architecture is, and we want to allow people to, purchase a planet. Let's just say I'm just pulling something out of the air, like a planet where you can build or insert your game, and then on in this ecosystem, everyone would have a planet which would have their own game, but there would be an inner um, oper, operability between each of the games in the ecosystem. And meanwhile, you can mix and match different NFT characters, and then if you really wanted to, utilize the platform that we had, you could wrap it if you wanted to in our hero, and then you could get multiplication. And like, let's just say you wanted to stake our coin, you would get like a 1-2x depending on how many NFTs you had in our platform. Or if you played our game, there's another token inside, similar to like Robux or Minecraft tokens, where you can use those to upgrade your character in the game, or collect, 3 or 4 different wearables. And then if you had all 4 of the golden wearables, it would activate something else, just to make it interesting and fun again, instead of these static NFTs that really do nothing, I think, for the space.
Yeah, I agree with your vision. I think the NFTs, as we are looking at them right now, are like the abacus of the space. We're
Yes.
definitely right. Adrian
Right.
can tell
Yeah.
you how many different projects she has.
But like, one of the things that is really awesome about NFTs is that it can be anything. And now we're starting to see, I mean, with BT's drop a couple of weeks ago, where he's got this 24-hour grandfather clock music sound, disintermediated multimedia experience that puts itself to sleep in dreams, and it's such a trip. I mean, he broke the internet. That's an NFT. It's like, wow. Okay, so what can we do? One of the things that we're doing is we're creating merch at concerts that can only be bought during the concert. So if you don't go to the metaverse concert and get the t-shirt, it's never going to be in your closet. And if only 7 people buy the 100 t-shirts that we minted, then 93 get burned. So then there's only 7 in existence. So it can be very it can be quite cool. The worry that I have, um, it's very easy to counterfeit, and counterfeit in such a way. Remember, we talked about this before with Sleep Minting Beeple's version 2 of 5,000 Days. Uh, the codes don't, they just record what actually happened. They just record, information that's put on there, and it's put on there in an immutable way. So it's always there. But that doesn't mean it's the truth. So we were talking about these t-shirts, and I was like, well, goodness gracious, what happens if somebody decides to, mint a counterfeit, well, it looks exactly the same because they grabbed the digital file and just minted another one. So that how do we ensure that everything that is on there is authentically, like, there needs to be some kind of almost like, certified organic sticker, something like that, um, for certain brands, like the little holograms or things like that that we had on baseball hats. So those are the kinds of things that I'm noodling on right now.
And you should talk to Andy Moy about that from last week with his
Hmm.
NFC technology. I've seen a company in Venezuela this week that has two credit cards there because in Venezuela, apparently, there aren't enough smartphones, and about 20 million people don't have a smartphone like we all have one, or three or four here. And so they're giving them these credit cards with NFC chips, which is kind of like a QR code, but better based on what Andy was describing. And these allowed them to have an identity on one of the cards and then have their trading done with the other, and they can use BTC, Ether, Dash, and their own cryptocurrency they're creating there, and they can purchase things with crypto because their currency is devaluing every minute. So I feel that that technology is kind of taking flight right now, because of these kinds of things that you're describing, Adrian, where you're trying to take a physical good of some sort and attach uniqueness to it, and then you can attach NFT to it as well. So
So have you heard of Tangem?
no.
It's a credit card that holds your BTC. It's a wallet. It's an identity. It's exactly what you just said. I know the founder. I met him in Las Vegas Blockchain Week a few years ago, and it's definitely a solution. It's like a hardware wallet, um, but more.
Yeah, and I think in some jurisdictions you're going to use these kinds of solutions for, just to solve these problems. For example, like the one I just described, maybe in Nigeria, we worked with a company that um, did a wallet on mobile phones, so they had more mobile phones, but it was attached to the POS system in local grocery stores, and they created a banking system and ability to pay your monthly installment bills using those POS systems and the wallets, kind of creating the regional banks, if you'd like. And they partnered with three Pan-African banks to do that. So I feel like in some of these jurisdictions, depending on what's available in the infrastructure, you would have to use these types of solutions. And then the others, we're using what we already use, amongst us here on the call. So do you guys, now this takes us to the Central America point from the newsletter, that there's a Bitcoin adoption that's happening in Latin America with El Salvador and a bunch of other countries considering adoption, um, Paraguay, etc. What do you think, Daniel? Is this going to get adopted?
So this is actually something I've been looking at closely. I mean, both being because I'm originally from Costa Rica, so I have, of course, an interest in the region, but also because it just keeps coming up, and that's part of the consulting work we also do with Satoshi Capital Advisors. Um, Particular with Salvador, when they came out saying that they were going to accept Bitcoin, my reaction was like, well, it's easy for you to say that because you've been dollarized for a while now. So essentially, you're not giving up monetary policy sovereignty by doing this. So big deal. Like that just means that other dollar-denominated countries or dollar-pegged countries could do the same. With the difference that dollar-pegged countries actually do hold kind of like the option to potentially unpeg and control their economy somehow. But like the countries that have actually dollarized, which is the case of, I mean, Panama is another country similar. Like I think Panama is actually pegged, like just like Hong Kong and several of the Middle Eastern countries. When you're already effectively dollarized, whether pegged or because you actually got rid of your currency, now you just use dollars. It's very easy to say, okay, we're gonna accept Bitcoin because you're not giving up anything. You don't have a currency to defend or like to use monetary policy to manipulate your economy to ensure that inflation is low, employment's high, stuff like that. So it's easy. Is it going to cause a domino effect across the whole region? I don't think so because other governments do have highly vested interest in their own currencies, for the fact that, I mean, monetary policy is very important for a country to maintain stability, and rein in inflation. However, and also like Salvador already kind of like diluted a bit their view and saying, well, it's not really it's going to be legal tender and everybody needs to accept it. It's more it's going to be like an initiative where like more people need to accept it. Because initially the thing was like, well, that means that even like the corner store bodega or pulperia is going to have to be able to accept Bitcoin, which was unrealistic. But what it's going to cause is that a lot of the regional banks will start looking at Bitcoin and they're going to start accepting it. There's going to be like a domino effect like that. But I don't think it's going to be at the government level. That I see very far fetched. The other economies that are effectively dollarized are dollarized for very different reasons. All the Caribbean countries that are dollarized are because of tourism. The Middle Eastern countries are because of oil, and oil is denominated in dollars. Hong Kong is because of commerce. So all these other countries are not dollarized for. I mean, they have very specific reasons to be dollarized, and I just don't see them suddenly like throwing that away and saying, okay, we'll take Bitcoin. But again, I think this may cause a snowball effect on the private commercial side, not at the government level. And I think I mean, it's good. And actually, even just last weekend, we had a big announcement in Mexico from Banco Azteca, which is one of the largest banks, saying that they're going to start doing Bitcoin brokerage, which is fantastic. So, I mean, you're starting to see a small snowball effect. I'm just not optimistic that it's going to be at the government level itself.
And at the actual enterprise level, uh, wouldn't that just be enough for the kind of country adoption, even though it's not necessarily mandated by the government? If all the transactions start happening in in Bitcoin and possibly other cryptocurrencies in a variety of these regions, wouldn't that be a de facto adoption?
Yes, but a much slower one. Because when you actually have like a top down, like government mandating, you have to do this or you cannot do this, um, it happens much quicker. So like even the fact that Salvador already like diluted their message and said that it's not really like legal tender as in the case that they need to accept it regardless. It's more like optional and that they're gonna like promote it. That's already diluting the messages, and that means not everybody's obligated. The moment a government say Bitcoin's legal tender, every single business is legally mandated to accept Bitcoin if somebody shows up and says, I want to pay in Bitcoin. So that's a very different level of adoption and kind of like commitment. So, yes, the enterprise adoption helps, but a top-down adoption is, a top-down mandate is always much stronger. And we can see, for example, in China, whenever China decides to like ban miners or like go for Bitcoin or something, like they do this like every few years, they have like a big mandate that changes something, and then like the whole country like overnight drops Bitcoin or buys Bitcoin or like starts mining or stops mining. So those top-down things are much more faster in terms of adoption. So I think it's good momentum. It's not going to be as strong as people think. It's not going to be like overnight.
Awesome. It's that really kind of gives us a coordinate system to think about this adoption globally. Um, and just for a moment, as you look at this marketplace that's developing with DeFi, NFTs, and consensus blockchain, there's so many consensus blockchain companies that have launched in the last, I don't know, decade and a half at this point. And all of them are sort of competing in a similar space. They have this network. They hope to become the network for sort of, Web 3.0. This is probably a Christian question. I don't know if he can do it while driving, but they have this network layer, and now they're hoping that everybody on planet Earth is going to create their applications on top of these networks. But yet they're all competing with each other. And most of these DAOs, unlike Binance, which markets to consumers all the time, most of these DAOs are, technical professionals, and they're not really great at marketing, so they're not marketing it to wider adoption. So what's going to happen in this space?
Okay, I heard you mentioning my name, but I missed the detail of the question.
So the question is, Do you think that what's going to happen with these native chains, because they're all competing with each other quite, they all try to have everything, every DeFi project, every NFTs project on them in order to compete with the other native chain. But what's going to happen in this space? Because really, at the end of the day, they're all competing to be the next generation Web 3.0 network.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things wrong with that premise, so maybe I'll divvy that out. So, Ethereum, for the time being, has kind of won the layer one game, right? So, and there's a little bit of a fight on the layer two game. And right now, Matic is pretty much on top of that, and we have an entire team that on a daily basis checks new solutions. But the last time I checked in with them, that was still the case. But then overall, I think it's very important to understand that blockchain have a very, very confined use case within the paradigm of Web3, right? So like yesterday, I was listening to Jason Calacanis. It drove me nuts. It was the first time that I wrote to him directly that he said just something really dumb, which he said blockchains are like databases. And he keeps saying that. And I heard him the first time say this here in Santa Monica, I think was like 5 years ago at a conference. And the larger point there being is blockchains are obviously not at all like databases. Databases are designed to store data, and that was a very bad idea to do that, right? It's about the fact that you're moving a digital primitive from A to B. That's the purpose of a blockchain, right? So to not create a copy. A database is about creating copies. A blockchain is about moving cryptographic primitives from A to B. And a lot of these systems actually, and a lot of these developers keep ignoring that. I had a long discussion about this morning again, because they're just doubling down on the fallacies of the past. They're still creating these kind of username account-based systems. And they all go into one particular bucket in my database here, because these are just going to be cannon fodder for actual Web3 solutions. And then fortunately, and I was just having a discussion with Tim over that from Evernym, for past Evernym, it's like every time I see these like quote unquote identity companies, they're doing the exact same thing. They're throwing these terms around, SSI in context of Web3. That's all nonsense. They're all using database technologies, right? And even if they are securing them using blockchain technology, which is not the same as blockchain, again, they just go on our list of, okay, we're going to invalidate your business model, and it's going to come overnight where your model is simply not valid anymore. Anyway, so larger point there being, what was your original question? Did I answer that one?
Well, there's a competition going on with,
Oh,
and you
yeah.
said Ethereum won the layer war, and I had a really, long discussion with Tezos this morning. And we had multiple discussions with them,
Sure.
and if you think about, the foundation, Tezos Foundation raised quite a bit of money in their ICO,
Sure.
and they never really spend it, so they have sort of a war chest, if you'd like. And so they fund a lot of projects on top of Tezos. They've also created the form of consensus where, Ethereum still, we still haven't seen 2.0. They're on their seventh upgrade, on Tezos. So they have 6 complete upgrades, and now they're, in a 7.0 level of upgrading. And they have been upgrading to the point where, like, you can mint an NFT and it costs you 7 cents on Tezos, and it may cost you $100 on Ethereum. So do you feel like some of these other layer one companies may have a shot, even though they didn't have the first mover advantage?
Well, in like the last 700 projects we looked at, none of them were utilizing Tezos. So that's one data point. I actually have not met any team building on Tezos. And we invested in Tezos
Actually, Mosaic is
initially.
built on Tezos, and they got funding from Tezos.
Who is that? Mosaic?
Mosaic, I'm global ambassador for Mosaic. It's a company out of China that builds NFTs for the music industry.
Okay. Yeah, make an introduction. Happy to look at this. Would be the first Tezos project we look at, actually.
Right.
Well, I think like that actually, like Eric just highlighted something that like a lot of the new projects that like I hear about Tesos are actually being funded by Tesos. I was speaking to a company that they're actually like right now they're tokenizing real estate on Ethereum, and then they're thinking of moving to Tesos because Tesos is giving them a grant. And I've seen that also in the past, like a lot of discussions, similar discussions in the world of like security token issuances. So just issuance onto Tesla just because they're getting paid. Same thing happens with Algorand. In also like maybe it's like more than a year, maybe 2 years ago, the same issue was with EOS. So every time you have these foundations that raised an ungodly amount of money, you gotta be wary whether or not the development is organic or they're just being paid to build, because that's a red flag that that ecosystem is not sustainable.
I would second what Daniel said. So we have the saying in VC, we invest in missionaries, but never in mercenaries. So
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
exactly what
I
Daniel
love that
said.
expression.
Yeah, so it's very interesting to track what happens to these. I know, Christian, you've been working with the guys at Anode, and they sit on top of a decentralized network that is more Web 3.0 like. You want to maybe address, like, why do you really like that network?
I can't really speak to that, to be honest. But at some point in time, I should bring someone in who can speak more to graph-based solutions like Tufi or someone else. That'd be useful because overall, that's actually the more important paradigm. Like blockchains are designed to build what I call digital vending machines. That's it, right? And most of them won't be viable, period, full stop, right? There's so many fallacies that are doubling down on the legacy paradigm in those developments. It's too many to actually count at this point in time.
Yeah, I think I got the Anode explanation. I don't even know how many times, maybe like 10 times by now. And it's very hard to kind of put in words because it literally isn't a network. It's literally node to node,
Yes.
limited communication. And it's almost like you burn the key as you as you communicate with the other node. And so it's completely decentralized. And as you pointed out, there's really no database being created of any kind.
Yeah, and I'm still running a node for them, by the
I
way.
know.
Oh, you knew. Okay. Yeah, so yeah, we've been doing this for quite some time, and we help them out with like troubleshooting their wallet design and whatnot at some point in time. Yeah, but you reminded me that I needed to catch up with Caleb actually.
Caleb is the kind of, I think he has like very loyal following globally in the Web 3.0 community. So he's quite brilliant. But yeah, it really goes in completely the opposite direction of data creation and data management as we know it. With the NFTs, I'm really loving the fact that we had someone talking about integrating DeFi with NFTs today. It seems that what they're doing is very complex, but if it could be simplified for users, it's going to be quite fun and interesting and addictive. And I think that DeFi would add a layer of addiction to NFTs, so that you're creating film, television, games, and music projects that also create a very loyal following and loyal community. And I think that's where the future of entertainment will be. Creating these units. We always thought that entertainment was going to go in the direction of community creation first and then media creation. But really, to date, everything has been centralized. So you create the media and you help to garner some viewership and maybe some community. But we never got to the point of creating the communities of interest and then distributing media to them that matters to them. And I think with the NFTs, we're finally able to go in that direction.
Yeah,
I
so
think it's. Oh, go
Yeah,
ahead, Kristen.
so maybe interesting enough. So a company that pitched us earlier today, they pitched us on the idea of creating NFT books. And there's one particular angle that I had proposed actually 2 years ago, which I find really, really interesting. So I assume that most people saw The Martian. I don't know if everybody read The Martian or knows the history about that. So that was a kind of a community project in the sense that Andy Weir, the author, started publishing these different chapters, and then he got peer review from actual NASA employees and ended up writing something that's truly hard fiction where there's very little errors in there. I think there's like 2 or 3 scientific errors in there, but other than that, whatever you read in the book is actually scientifically correct. So in order to like bring these projects to life, that's my real point here, is you need to have a lot of volunteers unless you actually want to hire a bunch of scientists that will then fact check your narrative for your book that then eventually becomes to a movie. But and that's probably just my personal hobby horse. But I want to see way more of this type of narratives, of these type of movies, of these type of books, right? Because we got all this garbage coming out of Hollywood for decades now. It's just some car chase and hero narratives. It's really, really boring. But if you actually can pack science into that narrative, then hopefully, like let's call it, our youth at large is actually interested in learning that, because it actually made me want to understand these scientific principles that we're touching on. So larger point there is, you could actually organize this kind of creative process by giving everybody a royalty that's associated to an NFT that's being attached to that particular project long term, right? So that I find really interesting. It's hard to do, right? So there's a couple of platforms, and maybe one other one that I'm actually considering just copying is what Seifedin does. So the way he writes his new book is he simply publishes on his own blog site, and then whoever has a membership there, they get to weigh in on these chapters, and he takes that peer review serious, and then eventually he publishes that book, and it includes all these attributions to everybody who was on that platform at the time. There's no token yet, but that's what I would do if I had the time.
I would like to go ahead and make a shout out for the Science and Technology Exchange here in Hollywood. There's a group funded by the National Science Foundation that does this work, consulting work for free for entertainment properties that are interested. So the tools are there. Not everybody's using them, obviously, but I'm also really interested in this
Can you
idea.
introduce me to those folks?
That'd
be useful.
can.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that'd be awesome.
But another
just a quick thing. I need to run because I have another call. But if anybody needs to get in touch with me, just through LinkedIn, Daniel Truque, and just make sure you put a message saying that we met here. And thanks again, and looking to speaking again next week.
Thanks, Daniel. See you then. Go ahead, Jeanette. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I'm really interested in this idea of removing the guilt from some of our kinds of entertainment by ways that are sort of quote unquote wasted time could be monetized. That's one really interesting point, like coming out of the gaming space is, I spend way too much time playing these, simple games, whether I'm making hamburgers or whatever. But the idea that somehow that time could be turned into something useful or something noble is really interesting to me. I wonder if anybody had any comments about that.
The time that you spent on gaming, converting it to some sort of an educational time spent?
Well, either converting it to money, like some of these gamers that spend a lot of time getting to a certain level in the game and then share that out with other people. I'm kind of interested in that notion that there's a way to take the guilt out of some of these hobbies by either exchanging it for money or exchanging it for access or exchanging it for something else that's desirable besides just getting a high score in the game.
Yeah, there was a company that has launched a token associated with gameplay, and they're actually supporting people in Philippines. They quit their day jobs and are able to actually use this tokenized economy to sustain themselves, in their current jurisdiction. Also, a company called Cent, CENT. They created something that was very interesting. It was like a next generation Instagram, and they're listed on MetaMask, so you can buy some stuff there or invest in people. They're allowing you to invest in the future talent. So let's say Taylor Swift, you met her when she was 15, and at 16 she was performing at the Grammys and won her first Grammy. You could, if you put 1 cent or 10 cents, that's their currency, on Taylor Swift in 2015, it could have been worth quite a bit of money in 2016. And so there are people around the world, they were performing and showcasing their artwork and their video and audio files on Scent, and being supported by, you know, patrons of their art, if you'd like, around the globe, and having them actually be sustained in the work that they are doing. So I think there are examples already that are percolating in what you're describing, that people can make money off of a hobby or off of their true calling, that they can make money off of, you know, where they live at the moment.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember when Scent, didn't they present at one of the live Infioms in there was
Yes, they presented in when we still had our
in,
in-person events. Dave, you have a question?
Well, I'd like to interject, if I may, something into the conversation, see what was in what you just both you and Jeanette were talking about, where when Jeanette used the word guilt, I find that apropos, where instead of looking at this as a way to make money, even if it's 10 cents at a time, in assuaging that guilt, why not have, I mean, because there's lots of well-heeled organizations out there trying to adapt to this, but of course their motive is greed and money, as opposed to, if it's education and true education, there's no reason why F9 could not be both exciting and interesting from the perspective of learning something that's true, whether it's aerodynamics or it's this or that, and it's a quick one-liner from Vin to, you know, Senna or whatever. There are ways of doing that. Unfortunately, as you have noted, Hollywood dumbs down everything, and even the writers are forced to dumb that down when in fact the audience is hungry for that. So yeah, I'm all for the model where, interestingly enough, you could use NFTs to further education in a game type interesting scenario, and think about what that could do for your 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 year olds, then coming into teen years where they're actually maybe starting to learn code. And where could that go? So a big organization could come in that has some money and actually start producing some programming that actually does that, and therefore the fan base would grow because kids are learning and talking about it to their parents, to whatever. Anyway,
well, yeah,
that's
I
my
think
thought.
that's really interesting, David. Or linking it to a not for profit. So maybe buying crypto kitties actually saves kitties or something. Where I feel like this notion of wasting time could be converted into something that somehow does somebody some good.
Oh, I'm with you 100%. I'll give you a quick example. Decentraland. So a friend of mine has a house in Decentraland, and he's made a gallery of a couple of the rooms and hanging on the walls some, primitive art. Now, imagine if you created a school in the form of some playhouse where everything you saw and touched and interacted with yielded some nugget of learning, along with, hey, that's fun. I was just talking with a friend of mine the other day about how trigonometry. Now, either you get it or you don't, either you like it or you don't. Most don't. But when I got into the visual side of things and I understood that you could cut a parabola in a geometric form and it creates this arc that then you could apply to any number of things, when you visualize it, all of a sudden, oh, I get what those points mean and all of this. And all of a sudden, someone who would have no desire to have anything to do with math, all of a sudden visually, oh, I got to find out more about this. Now you could do this in a game, you could do this in a piece of art, you could do the and interacting with it. In fact, I'm working on something where that art goes virtual, but off the wall. But I'm just saying that with all the money that's sloshing around, and let's face it, the whales of the crypto world are coming from other worlds where they got lots of money and they're corrupting the platform. Why not work at that kind of a principle? And there certainly is money out there to do that. And you do one program really good, fan base grows, hundreds of thousands of followers, boom, do another. And if it's all free because it's about education, wow, where could we be in 5 years?
Well, good news. Our last article in the newsletter, David, just for you. At a summer camp, juice boxes at Bitcoin mining. So there's a Los
Yeah.
Angeles camp where
Yep.
children are enjoying, Bitcoin mining among other activities. And the founder of the camp, Naja Roberts, who is Black and started the camp as the one way to try to close the, racial wealth gap, basically says that when she went to school, she feels like she grew up in school and nobody ever taught her how to, create a savings account and manage money and
Right.
get access to capital. So I see that here in the clubhouse, we have a lot of people who are, holding clubhouse areas that are teaching people about investment in Bitcoin and other currencies and in general investment. And I feel that we're definitely poised right now to, do a great thing with this next generation. I think we should have more of these summer camps and more interesting things that David was talking about and Jeanette, where kids are actually learning and maybe learning how to manage money and through crypto functions, how to earn money through crypto mining, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, if they're going to learn about money, they might as well learn about new money, not old money.
The
Right?
money that's going to take over the world. Well, I appreciate everyone's participation. I tried to keep these at 1 hour. Very interesting discussion. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We will be back here at 1:30 next week. And at 12:30, we have our virtual Infiom Salon, which is on Zoom. You can sign up on it on Eventbrite. Even if you Google it, Infiom Salon or virtual Infiom Salon, it should come up right on Google. Has a very high placement, so can't miss it. It's free. You can see us in person and interact with us, and then bring your questions for your venture or some ideas you may have to the clubhouse at 1:30 to then further discuss with our panel of experts and speakers at the salon. So thank you again. See you all next Wednesday.
See you then.
Happy 4th.
Thanks, Mariana.
Bye, you guys.